Well, we're recording. It says we're live. Well, that's great. Hello, hello. It's Tuesday and it's 4 o'clock. Michelle, is it 4 o'clock Pacific? Yeah. It's 4 o'clock Pacific. It's 6 o'clock here in Costa Rica, 7 o'clock on the East Coast. I have no clue what time it is in Ireland, or because we just did the time change. And so, but it's early in the morning there, and it's Wednesday morning in Australia and Indonesia. So welcome everyone. It's Facebook Live. And this is my favorite Facebook Live of the month, every month, because it's with Michelle.
We get to nerd out together.
Right.
I love it.
Hi, Michelle.
Hi, Dr. Tom. So happy to be here.
Oh, for me too, for me too. And Marzi just got me online on my phone, so I could say that Janet Campbell is the first one here, and Jenny's here from Washington, and Debbie's here from British Columbia. Dorada's in New York City. Hello, everyone. And I'll keep going as we keep going. But this is a Q&A, and so this is a day where Michelle and I just start talking, and as you have questions, just put them in the chat, and we'll in the chat, or yeah, in the chat, or in the Q&A, in the Q&A.
In the Facebook chat, in the comments.
Okay.
I think it's officially called comment section.
I've got two sections here. I've got a chat and I've got a Q&A.
That's because we have an amazing team making this all happen behind us, and they're going to
Right,
put those questions into the chat so that you and I can flow.
Oh, the chat's for our flow.
Yes.
Okay, good, good. So
because usually we're like looking down, trying to find the questions.
Right. So, oh God, this is so much fun. All right, so the first question, the first topic I thought we'd get into, Michelle and I just tag teamed on this a couple minutes ago, is that people say, well, I've been gluten-free and I'm really squeaky clean about being gluten-free. I don't need to test myself, do I? Or the other side of that question is, my doctor says I have to eat wheat again in order to find out if I'm gluten sensitive. So Michelle has a great answer to that. So let's just start there, Michelle.
Yes, you and I both have Zoomers on the brain because we're both participating, which is such an honor, in the mini Zoomer Summit through Vibrant America. So I've been focusing on this and getting sample reports together. But this is a test result of somebody that I'm close friends with, spent quite a bit of time with. I know how squeaky clean she is with her gluten-free diet, and we were both a little shocked at this. So this is why this test is so critically important, because I would say 90% of the time, if somebody is on a gluten-free diet and they run Wheat Zoomer, there's something out of range.
There's something that's still positive saying you've got a problem with wheat.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
And even those of us that are squeaky clean, and we use it as our report card, it just gets us back a little bit more on the straight and narrow. Like, we're never too lazy to get our wheat rescue out of our purse at a restaurant. And we just are that much more conscious with being label reading detectives. And it's just such a critically important test. But I just wanted to share this with everybody. So I'm going to share screen.
You know, and while you're doing that, I'm going to say to guys, if you wear jeans, the jeans have this pocket here that used to be a watch pocket, but it's a wheat rescue pocket now. So I've always got a couple of them in my pocket when I'm wearing jeans.
That's so perfect.
We've always got access.
Or
unless guys, you want to wear a purse. If you want to carry a purse, you know, and I'm not saying, but if you want to carry a purse, go ahead. But if not, and you're wearing jeans, put it in the watch pocket.
I do love the convenience of the purse and not having to dig it out with the lint out of my, not that I would have lint in my pockets, of course not. But anyway, back to this is an example of why this test was so critically important to run. We affectionately call this lit up like a Christmas tree because the greens and the reds, some yellow flashing lights, right? But I just think that this test is so important. I mean, I invest in running it on myself. I know you and Marzi both invest in it, and we're worth it, right?
Most people probably have not seen a test like this before or know how to read test results. And obviously the red is like stop red, the green, yellow, red. But most laboratories and most doctors in the world, if they're checking for a wheat sensitivity, they do the test that the lab recommends. And the lab recommends that you look for alpha-gliadin. If you're looking for celiac disease, where Michelle is circling there, it's transglutaminase. And if they're an advanced lab, they'll look for deamidated gliadin. Those are the two common markers accepted that suggest you're on the celiac disease spectrum. But we know that celiac disease is only one manifestation of a problem with wheat. There was one study that dropped my jaw early when I began studying this, that in a tertiary referral center, that means your family doctor doesn't know what's wrong, he sends you to the neurologist. The neurologist doesn't know what's wrong, he sends you to a tertiary neurology center. So you only get in there if it's a referral from a neurologist who doesn't know what's wrong. And what the tertiary center said, when the cause of a neurological condition can be identified, the percentage of people that are positive with a sensitivity to wheat is 5%. When the cause of a neurological disease at the tertiary center cannot be identified, the percentage of people with a sensitivity to wheat is 57%. Wow. More than half of them. When the tertiary research neurology center can't figure out, why does this person have neurology symptoms? 57% of them have a sensitivity to wheat that's contributing to the inflammation and probably a component of the neurological symptoms they're having. Thus, stop eating wheat, Mrs. Patient. And those specialists have written a number of papers since then. The guy who runs that center, his name is Marios Hadjivassiliou, and just world renowned, showing how wheat causes brain degeneration and ataxia, which means difficulty in walking. And they're a world renowned center for that. So the first part of that test that Michelle's circling there looks for celiac, but there are many, many other problems with wheat besides celiac. And when doctors are looking for a sensitivity to wheat without celiac, Michelle, can we pull up the next page for the gliadin? There we go. The alpha gliadin, you see the first two there. That's the only marker that 98% of the laboratories in the world will check. It's the only one they check. Why? Because that's what they did in the late 1990s and the early 2000s when they bought their equipment, and they keep doing the same test, which is a useful test. But when you look at this test result here, this is all different components of wheat that may trigger an immune response, not just alpha-gliadin. Alpha-gliadin is important. Transglutaminase and deamidated gliadin for celiac disease are important, but this test looks at 26 different markers. We'll put the link up here for this test so you can go to our website, you can see it, download the information, take it to your doctor and say, please order me this test. And if they won't do it, you can order it from us, right? Because it's so important. We think it's so important that you find out whether or not wheat is a contributor to the problems you have. Now I'm going to do a little more shout out here. So we're going to start with, let's see, Teresa's in Ireland. She said it's just after midnight. Thank you, Teresa. Great to see. Marilyn's in Newfoundland. Brenda's in Connecticut. Shakilo, like Shaquille, but with an O on the end. Shakilo says, does CBD cross-react with gluten like corn? Can potentially. I've not heard any reference to that. Michelle, have you heard anything on that?
I haven't seen any studies on that.
Neither have I. Anything is possible, but that's not commonly talked about or even rarely talked about in the medical literature. That
Mhm.
doesn't, that may not be a problem for you though, Shaquilo. Brenda says, when we order the Zoomer test through you, do we need a local doctor to give us a lab order? No, no, you don't. Kathleen Cousins is watching, great. Steph is here from Missouri, great, thanks so much. And as more people say hi and put little hearts up, you know, we'll acknowledge that. Michelle, do we have some questions coming in?
We do. Amanda is from Sydney, Australia, and she says,
Hey.
Dr. Tom, can you please tell me if your colostrum helps not only to reset the immune system, but does it help regulate gut dysbiosis?
Absolutely, absolutely. The earliest mechanism of Mother Nature telling the newborn child, okay, it's time to get that gut working, because when a baby is born, baby is completely permeable. Intestinal permeability is advanced, severe, because it's normal when baby's in utero. Marzi right now is got the Buddha belly. You know, she's 8 months out there, and there was some woman who saw Marzi and said, oh, it's a boy. And it's because, I guess, boys tend to Buddha belly more, kind of point out like that. And our son is completely permeable right now because he's swimming in that soup in there. And, you know, that's normal. But when baby is born, if it's a natural childbirth coming down through the canal, being squeezed a bit, the lungs, you know, all the fluids getting squeezed out of them and all that. The first message that tells that gut it's time to close those tight junctions is colostrum. Colostrum is the first 3 to 5 days of mother's breast milk. It's not milk, it's colostrum. And it's loaded with bacteria. That's normal. Mom is inoculating baby with the colostrum and with bacteria. You know, the technology now, they can identify the bacteria at below microscopic levels that couldn't do that 15 years ago. Nobody knew, you know. So, but the colostrum also turns the genes on in the gut, not only to close the tight junctions, the intestinal permeability, but also let's get those docking stations working. Let's build those docking stations, because here comes the bacteria from mom that needs to have a place to dock and lock in and colonize and reproduce. And colostrum feeds that bacteria. It helps it to grow and get established. So that's why I think that almost all of us, not quite, but almost all of us would do really well to use colostrum for at least a couple of months. You know, Marzi, I take it every smoothie. I want my colostrum in there. But I'm not suggesting you have to do that, but at least for a couple of months. And Michelle, many people ask, what about if I have a dairy sensitivity? What do we say to them on that?
And that is her next question. I'm 100% organic, dairy, and gluten-free. So most people can tolerate it well for 2 months, right? Usually the benefits outweigh any cons of potentially turning on any or elevating any antibodies to any of the peptides of dairy, because there shouldn't be a high number of peptides in colostrum to dairy. But if somebody's really sensitive, we've done a couple different approaches. Like, instead of doing the full scoop, we start with 1/8 of a teaspoon and we work up as they can tolerate until they're able to tolerate that full scoop for a couple months. Or we have them do, and we can put those links in as well. There's serum-derived immunoglobulins that have no dairy. So those can be alternatives for people who have an extreme dairy sensitivity.
Right. And I like saying to people also, you know, Mrs. Patient, we just found out you're sensitive to dairy. Okay, get the cheese out and the ice cream and the sour cream and the yogurt, you know, do coconut yogurt, that's fine. You know, but get the milk products out. Butter may be okay, depends on your test results. If you have elevated antibodies to milk butyrophilins, then you can't have butter. But if you don't have elevated antibodies to milk butyrophilins,
You may still not be able to have butter, but
right.
But you may. I mean, there's kind of can goes back and forth.
Right, but it's ghee. you're able to have ghee if you don't have antibodies to milk butyrophilins.
Correct. That's
and ghee is just clarified butter. It's that white stuff that comes to the top when you melt butter down. That's casein, and you scoop that off, and that rich golden liquid is ghee. That's clarified butter that you get if you order lobster in a restaurant or something. So get all that stuff out of there, but try some colostrum. See if you can take it, because nothing turns on as many genes as colostrum does. And as long as you don't get any bloating or any gas or any abdominal cramps or anything, take it for a couple of months, because it's going to give you more bang for the buck to rebuild a healthier microbiome than anything else we know. And as Michelle said, and if you find that you can't take it, okay, it was worth a try. You know, my body won't use it. Maybe my husband can use it, or my daughter or my son or something. And then going to serum-derived immunoglobulins is the next best thing to strengthen the immune system of your gut.
She has one more question, Dr. Tom. She wants to know, should there be a disproportionate balance of bad to good bacteria? So that's an interesting question. So most people—
Yes, it's not equal. It's not equal. It's like, should there be the same number of bad guys walking on the street with guns as police officers? And the answer is no, no. That if there's too many bad guys, you need more police officers. And if that doesn't work, you bring in the National Guard. You know, you bring in IGA, you know, if you need them, right? But the way balance is kept in your microbiome, it's a dominance thing, that the good bacteria far outweighs the bad bacteria. So there's competition for food, and the good bacteria gets the majority of the food, almost all of it. So the bad bacteria can't be fed very well. And the good bacteria covers the inside lining of the gut, the tube, so that the bad bacteria can't find any place to grab a hold and colonize in there. And the good bacteria also produces antibacterial enzymes, and they're called bactericidins, that will kill some of the bad bacteria or make it really unfriendly for the bad bacteria to grow. When you've got too much bad bacteria, it's called dysbiosis, you got problems in your gut, by definition, you don't have enough of the good guys, because the good guys couldn't keep your house in order, and the bad guys came in and they're taking over. So that is, there is no equalness here. That the dance of the microbiome is one that we're going to be learning so much more about in the years to come, because at 1% ratio, Akkermansia is really good for you and reduces your risk of autoimmune diseases. But a higher concentration of Akkermansia, you're much more at risk for Sjogren's and lupus, autoimmune diseases. But if you have the right balance, and that's why we're always talking about building the diversity of your microbiome. That's why you get 5 or more different types of fermented vegetables, and you have just a forkful every day, because each fermented vegetable is producing different families of the good bacteria. So when you have a forkful a day, and you're increasing the bacterial content of your food 10,000-fold, not 10%, not 100%, not 1,000%, 10,000-fold, just by having about a forkful a day and alternating them. All right, that's enough on that one.
Oh no, you and I could go off on that for days.
Yes.
It's so exciting, all the new research showing that the variety of possibly 30 different plant-based foods every week could remedy almost any health issue. I mean, hey. I was counting up how many different things I had at lunch, and I'm like, cha-ching. So yeah, it's just fun to like throw all the different things into the salad and just start ticking off that number to 30.
Amen. Amen to that. That's a really good recommendation. Olive Kaiser's watching. Hello, Olive. Let me say hello. And I got your messages, and I haven't forgotten about you. You're on my hit list to get to. So you've not been forgotten. There's a question here, Michelle. I'll read the question. You can start with it. From Maria. She says, I have celiac colitis, Hashimoto's, and 3 other autoimmune conditions. My functional doctor ordered Cyrex Array 10. Can I do this test rather than all the Zoomers?
Oof. So Cyrex Array 10 can be really valuable, but we have to go further upstream. So we need the wheat Zoomer because it's very similar to Array 2 and 3X. It has more markers and it's significantly less expensive. And it has a higher sensitivity and specificity, which means that even if your total immunoglobulins are low, your body's ability to produce antibodies are compromised, we're still going to be able to interpret your test results. So don't be sad that you ordered Array 10. It can give us valuable information, and some of those foods can be cross-reactive to Hashimoto's or certain autoimmune diseases. So use that information, it's valuable, but I would still really recommend a wheat Zoomer because that is going to have the intestinal permeability panel, which Jamie asked. I'm looking ahead. No, Janet. How does wheat Zoomer test for gut permeability? So I'm just going to share this again real quickly because I'm a visual learner. And this is the intestinal permeability panel. So why is this the best, most comprehensive intestinal permeability right now, Dr. Tom, available?
So 2 reasons, but first, what are we looking at here now?
We're looking at.
This is the test result. This is page 3 of the test results of the wheat Zoomer.
Correct.
Because
Correct.
Some people don't know.
They jumped on late. Thank you.
So the section that Michelle has highlighted there in red, the markers for intestinal permeability, they're looking at the antibodies here as anti-zonulin, IgG and IgA, anti-actin, IgG, IgA, and anti-LPS, IgG, IgA, IgM. These are the markers that are tested both on the Cyrex Array number 2 and here on Cyrex Array number 3. But as Michelle said, the sensitivity and specificity, which means you can count on this being accurate all the time. That as long as your body is able to produce antibodies, if your immune system's working okay, this test is right on the money every time. The Cyrex tests can't make that claim. They're very good. We still use Cyrex tests a lot for those things that we need to, but they can't make the claim that they're 97 to 100% sensitive and specific. That's one reason why we like this marker for intestinal permeability. The other reason is that that first marker up there, zonulin levels, most 95% of all the research on leaky gut is looking at zonulin levels, not zonulin antibodies, zonulin levels. And there's a couple of papers on zonulin antibodies, but not many. So this is the only lab that's doing the antibodies and the zonulin levels. Now, most doctors, if they're thinking about zonulin, they're looking at zonulin levels, which is a good thing, but the lifespan of zonulin is 4 minutes to 4 hours. So if they do a blood draw and your body made the extra zonulin for leaky gut 15 hours ago, it'll come back negative to zonulin being a problem. But the antibodies to zonulin have a much longer lifespan, 4, 6 weeks, something like that. So doing the antibodies is more consistent and of value to do. But if you can include the zonulin levels, it's even more comprehensive. So that's the other reason why we like this one so much.
Mhm.
Now, there's a question that came in that I really want to do because it's a great question from Maria. Does a child born by C-section have a microbiome? And that's a really good question, Maria, because it's critically important. Marzi's wanting me to look at the questions in the chat, and she's giving me the eye. Thank you. Yeah, that's right. Our team's working hard to put them in the chat. But I'm wanting to say hello to people, and I just saw this. There's a couple of questions, but in any event, yeah, Maria. If we did not have a microbiome, we could not live on the planet. We would get sick really quick, and we would not survive in a relatively short period of time. A matter of perhaps months. No one's ever done a study on that because you don't want to do that. But the microbiome is essential to our health. Let's put this in perspective. 36%, more than a third of all the small molecules in the bloodstream, everything in the bloodstream. Remember, your bloodstream is just a highway. It's just a highway carrying a bunch of traffic. They're all going in the same direction, but there's no lanes of traffic. Everything's bouncing into each other like bumper cars, right? But it's all going one way. 36% of the small molecules in the healthy bloodstream come from, they're the exhaust of the microbiome in your gut. Why? Because the microbiome in your gut, here comes a geek word, modulates how your body functions. What modulates means is has its hands on the steering wheel. And many of you have heard us say before, for every one message from the brain going down to the gut, there are 9 messages from the gut going up to the brain. That's how those messages of direction for how many brain hormones to make, called neurotransmitters, that's how the brain gets the message, is the metabolites, the exhaust from the bacteria in your gut. Too much bad bacteria, bad metabolites, bad exhaust. It's like a car that's blowing smoke driving down the highway, a lot of black smoke coming out the exhaust pipe. And people with depression, people with anxiety, people with schizophrenia. Rebuild the microbiome to a diverse, healthy microbiome, and their cognitive complaints reduce. Their symptoms of anxiety, their symptoms of depression. Just Google depression and the microbiome. Look at all the studies that come up. So yes, Maria, a child born by C-section does have a microbiome. Now here's the kicker. And these were some of the early studies that helped us understand how important it is. That if the child doesn't get the microbiome from mom coming down the birth canal, all that crud the baby's covered with when baby is born, we see in the movies, they wipe it off right away. You shouldn't wipe it off. You should leave it, just get it off the eyes and stuff, but just put that baby on mommy's tummy right away. Marzi and I just learned that, what's it called? The crawl? The breast crawl. You put a newborn on mommy's tummy, looking up at mommy. So baby's gonna lift his head, looking up at mommy, and baby will do the breast crawl to get to the nipple to feed. There's a smell that baby's familiar with, and that baby crawl, sometimes it takes 20, 30 minutes apparently. We're just learning this now. But I believe that if baby's crawling for food, as soon as baby comes out of the womb, baby is going to be a more independent, I'm going to get what I need in life in a healthy way, right? But that baby's going to take the initiative to get what they need more. And I had, my ex and I had 2 natural childbirths. Both of our kids were born at home, which was great. Baby came out, I snipped the cord, put baby on mom's chest right by the nipple right away. Now we know, put baby down a little bit lower. So looking at mom, and mom's like all freaking out, oh, my baby, and all that, which is wonderful, all that love that's pouring. But also baby's like, hey, I'm getting a little hungry here. What's that I smell? We'll start kind of crawling up there. So yes, so the early studies, back to Maria's question, the early studies on this showed that babies born by C-section develop the microbiome of the environment that baby is born in. So if it's a hospital setting, baby's microbiome gets a lot of those bad bugs that they're always trying to sterilize people from, but that's such a sterile environment, only the bad guys can survive in there. That's why so many people get infections in hospitals, right? That's one of the reasons why. And so baby's microbiome, when tested months or a year after birth, if they were C-section, they've got the microbiome of the room. They were Klebsiella, Pseudomonas, E. coli, not good bacteria. And these kids are much more sensitive to developing asthma and eczema as children and teenagers. You know, the studies just keep coming out now showing how important it is. And so if mom needs a C-section for whatever reason, there are a number of studies that talk about the doctor or the father should take, there's these special sponges that you put up in the canal, the vaginal canal, and get them full of that goop. And if mom has to have a C-section, you do that sponge thing and then just wipe the baby in whatever you can of mom's microbiome. And there's a number of studies on that now that show the benefits of doing that. So it's a really good question that I wanted to address from Maria Miller. So thank you for asking that question. Michelle?
Ira says, good morning from the Philippines. Been suffering from migraine since yesterday. Any recommendations? Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. First thing I would think of is drink 2 big glasses of water within 5 minutes.
Absolutely.
It's a very common component of not doing well and having migraines is that people are dehydrated. There are many other things on the checklist, but the first one you do is always make sure you're really hydrated well. And you do that within 5 minutes, 2 big glasses. And then you take stock of how much water am I drinking? Oh, I drink a lot of water. Okay, so if you're drinking a cup of, how many cups a day do you drink? Oh, I drink at least 3. So if that's an 8-ounce glass, that would be 24 ounces a day. And you think that's a lot. But the number that we need is 1/3 to 1/2 ounce per pound body weight. So I weigh 180. That means I need about 90 ounces of water a day. And if these are 8-ounce glasses, I was using as an example, that would be 11 of those a day. And if you weigh 120 or 110, and you're thinking about 8-ounce glasses, 8 times 12 is 96. So that means 13 of these glasses a day. So if you think about the number of what we should be getting, then tell me that you're drinking enough water, right? So that's the first thing on the list. Michelle, would you like to add to that?
Yes, and if you drink it and you urinate it right out within a half an hour, maybe you need to add some sea salt to the water, right? I mean, if you had a medical grade electrolyte to add, that'd be even better, but add some sea salt to it and see if you can get it to stay in your cells a little bit better, because we need electrolytes for the water to actually penetrate the cells. I also think, you know, constipation. So check in. When was the last time you had a bowel movement? That's so critically important and so linked. We're going for the lowest hanging fruit right now, Dr. Tom, right?
Right, start there. You start there.
And it could be magnesium deficiency. So if you have access to magnesium glycinate, magnesium citrate from a really good source, you know, that's one of the supplements that our body kind of tells us when we've maxed out. We get diarrhea or loose stool. So you can titrate up to that dose and then back down once you get it, you know, and that can really help to relieve. Epsom salt baths, if you have it, that's another way to get magnesium in. So reducing stress, right? Just breathing, just taking a second to do a 5-second inhale. You need more, taking like 5 minutes to do a 5-second inhale, 5-second exhale. smile, breathe in and out through your heart. That can be really profound for putting you into parasympathetic instead of sympathetic, the stress response, the fight or flight.
So there are many, many things on the checklist that can be helpful. In order, I would agree with Michelle. First one's water. Second one is how often are you moving your bowels? Now, there's something called the, what's it called?
It'll come, it just is filed somewhere up there.
It'll come. But when you chew, when you eat, there's a message, there's a reflex, the gastrocolic reflex, the oral gastrocolic reflex. You chew, it sends a message down to your gut that says, let's move things along now. It's time to make some room because there's food coming. So we should be having a bowel movement ideally, and realistically doesn't happen for many people, but ideally we should be having a bowel movement after or before every meal or after every meal. So that's 2 or 3 a day, well-formed, easy to evacuate. And if that's not happening, as Michelle said, I'm wondering about your bowel movement history. It's like backing your car into a snowbank. And well, in the Philippines, they don't have snow, but you're backing your car into a snowbank and the exhaust pipe gets full of snow, or the exhaust pipe gets full of sand. If you back into a sandbank, the exhaust comes back into the car. That's what happens when you're constipated. The exhaust comes back into the car and you feel shitty. Excuse me, but that's, it's just basic physiology. That's what happens. So
I think that's where that expression came from, Dr. Tom.
Probably true. This is a question from Ember.
Okay.
My daughter has CVID, common valuable immune deficiency, no immunoglobulins. She's also autistic with Hashimoto's. I read that first part and my mind said immediately, but then the second part of her question, I hate saying these out loud. She was suctioned as I had back labor with an epidural. Would this have disrupted the microbiome as well as C-section? I'd love to figure out the why. Thanks. So the concept of being suctioned impacting on the microbiome, so it was a natural childbirth, but there was some mechanical assistance to it. The good news is she was still exposed to mom's microbiome, which is excellent, but it's really easy to check, Ember, because the first thing that comes to my mind when you talk about immune deficiency, autism, Hashimoto's is the microbiome. You've got to check the microbiome. You have to do a test to see what is the current balance in her microbiome. Critically important. Many articles about autism and the microbiome, many articles on Hashimoto's and the microbiome, and a compromised immune system. The 80 to 85% of your immune system is in your gut. And so the microbiome would, by definition, have to be out of balance, severely out of balance in that situation. So absolutely, I would be looking at testing her microbiome. And Michelle, what tests would you recommend? And then staff, let's put the link there as Michelle talks about the tests.
I would likely, for a child, I would do gut Zoomer. GI maps could be good as well. There's just so many more markers on the gut Zoomer. And it has these really great 2 different ways to test for diversity. I think there's the Shannon's index, and I'm forgetting the other one right now, but it's a really great way right at the very top of the test first thing to say, do we have insufficiency dysbiosis? We don't have enough diversity. We don't have enough of the good guys. So, and then it's just really profound. There's the most markers for inflammation, gut inflammation that I've seen on any test today. It gives markers about digestion. Is she digesting her food well? And then so many different bacteria. So it's a really great test. The Vibrant Wellness Gut Zoomer.
And Michelle, I could just hear mom going off right now in her head say, my child won't eat anything. They'll never eat fermented vegetables. So why even bother?
I know that there's people out there that are doing a really great job of explaining this, but ultimately you are still the parent, right? And this child is a gift to you for safekeeping. And so there's ways to work. I'm not an expert in this. I have a close friend who is an expert in helping kids with autism to eat, but she's pretty strict about it. Like, they don't get these junk foods just because that's the only thing that they'll eat. You just get to learn how to make healthy foods fun and desirable, often having them in the kitchen with you, helping to make it with them. They'll be much more creative, but it's just slowly introducing and making the only food in the house available, right? You get to choose whether you drive into the McDonald's drive-thru. That's you doing the driving in the car.
That's
right? Your 6-year-old or 8-year-old cannot get to a fast food drive-thru on their own. So I think it's just really important to work with an expert that can help you navigate this, because it's overwhelming.
I agree. And some people just will not eat fermented vegetables. So you take a spoon and take 1/8 of a teaspoon of the juice in the jar, and you put it in the mashed potatoes. Or you put it in their ranch salad dressing. You hide it. They don't have to taste it. They just got to get it down. And you just start with little baby steps. And after a couple of weeks, maybe you're up to a 1/4 teaspoon of the juice, right? And you just keep sneaking a little of that stuff in there until their gut starts getting the message, oh, hey, I'm feeding some of the good guys here, or the good guys are getting a stronger foothold. And that's a component to working with a child with autism to change the microbiome. But the first thing is to test that microbiome.
Yeah, I love making confetti with my nieces and nephews to put in the salad. So we'll take kale or any leafy green and we'll pulse it in a food processor, and we sprinkle it like confetti around the salad. So nobody gets a big old chunk of kale that they have to chew on for days. They're just getting little tiny pieces that they don't even really taste once you put a healthy fun dressing on it. So there's some great little tips and tricks out there.
I thought that we really fooled our kids when they were small, because we allowed them to put ranch salad dressing on the kale, but they would eat the kale. But when I turned my head away, they actually were taking the kale and reaching down, and the dog was eating it. So, after they're adults, I find out this kind of stuff, right? So,
I love Kelly and Jason. They're the best. Jackie has such a good, critically important question, Dr. Tom. Do I need to eat wheat to test for celiac with wheat Zoomer?
Go ahead.
No. She said I started wheat and gluten 3 days ago after 2 years gluten-free, so I could test for celiac. I will need gut healing after my 6 weeks and then try the wheat Zoomer. So this is my advice on that. 90% of the people we test on a gluten-free, wheat-free diet are positive to some aspect of wheat or gluten, or have intestinal permeability markers or even celiac markers elevated on that test. So what I would do is I would test the genetics associated with celiac disease, right? You've already been gluten-free. Maybe in 6 weeks of damaging your body, possibly tipping over into an autoimmune response, which is tragic. And I don't even want to cancel that. I don't even want to put that out there, but that's really, really possible. Your body's been without it for 2 years. I don't know how careful you've been with your gluten-free diet. I would do wheat Zoomer right now, and I would not add that in. I would add on the celiac markers, or if you've done 23andMe to test the celiac markers, 40% of the population carry one of the genes associated, the 2 main genes, and there's potentially 7 So 40%, that's a huge number that for them eating gluten is like playing Russian roulette. You don't know when you're going to turn that gene on. I get
I'd
that
like to,
about it.
yeah, absolutely. And I'd like to say they're playing Russian roulette in developing celiac disease. But carrying the gene says that's the weak link in their chain. And if they pull at that chain, it's going to break somewhere. Now, the doctors that recommend eating wheat for 6 weeks, these are gastroenterologists usually that were trained, and that was the line of thinking a decade ago. The problem with that is that if they say, no, you don't have celiac disease, it doesn't matter. Just Google depression and wheat, Alzheimer's and wheat, rheumatoid arthritis and wheat, not celiac disease. Celiac disease is only one manifestation of a wheat-related disorder. It's important, but it's only one. So you eat wheat and you test 6 weeks later, you're feeling pretty sick by then, but docs, no, you don't have any markers of celiac disease, you're fine. Well, I don't feel good. Well, you know, it's okay, there's nothing wrong here, because they're thinking about celiac disease. They're not thinking about all of the autoimmune conditions like Hashimoto's or lupus or rheumatoid or MS, where the antibodies are elevated and you're killing off cells, killing off cells, killing off cells, and you're developing the autoimmune, but you don't have celiac. So the gastroenterologist can do a Pontius Pilate. You know, I check for celiac, there's no celiac, so I'm okay here. It doesn't matter if you have celiac or not in determining whether you can eat wheat. That is not a determinant factor. What is the determinant factor is if your immune system, that's the armed forces trying to protect you, Army, Navy, Air Force, Marines, Coast Guard, if your immune system says you've got a problem with wheat, you've got a problem with wheat. And it's going to manifest wherever the weak link is in your chain, which is determined by your genetics and how you've lived your life, the environment around you. That's the bigger picture, not celiac disease. Celiac is important, but you don't limit yourself. Well, if I don't have celiac, I guess I can eat wheat. No. In a tertiary neurology center, meaning the family doctor referred the patient to the neurologist, neurologist couldn't figure out, referred it to the tertiary neurology research center. If they could identify the condition, 5% of the people had a sensitivity to wheat. If they couldn't identify the condition, 57% have a sensitivity to wheat, meaning it's contributing to their neurological problem, which may be ataxia or depression or schizophrenia. Really important to understand. Stop thinking exclusively about celiac. That's a major message that the DRTOMOBRYANGLUTENFREE is carrying out now. And you know, celiac is important, but it's only this much of a wheat-related disorder. The wheat-related disorder is like this, and it includes celiac, like that. Okay.
One more thing to add to that, because this is the path that I went down, Jackie, and it doesn't end well. I had been gluten-free, and then they had me eat gluten, made me so terribly ill. And then they go in and do a small bowel biopsy. They biopsy typically 4 areas of 20 feet of small intestines.
Right.
If you've been gluten-free, our bodies have the most amazing capacity to heal. You've likely really healed your small intestines. It would be a tragedy if in 6 weeks you had created solid villus atrophy in 20 feet of small intestines. So maybe you have villus atrophy, but maybe they won't biopsy that exact spot, because it takes years to get full villus atrophy, Marsh 4, right?
Right.
So even that test alone is likely going to fail you, even if you did have celiac disease.
Now that's a really elevated concept for people to understand. Michelle's absolutely right. So here's how you keep in perspective. When they take 3 or 4 samples in an endoscopy, You know, they put the tube down there and they snip off a little bit. They're snipping off the tiniest little section. Each of the samples they take is the tiniest little section. They're not taking a thumbnail. You know, they're taking a tiny little section to look under a microscope to see. Now, the surface area of your intestines is the size of a badminton court. Not quite a tennis court, but a badminton court. That whole surface. And they're taking 3 or 4 tiny little sections of that whole surface. And what Michelle's saying, they can't be comprehensive when they do that. So it's easy to miss. So that's a last resort test. I don't know that I've recommended endoscopy and biopsy more than twice in 40 years, because it doesn't tell us, it's not the determinant factor in how you're going to work with this person. Your immune system response is the determinant factor if you have a competent immune system.
Absolutely. Okay, Lucia says, I'm sensitive to gluten. Can I eat sourdough bread?
We both are smiling because we wish we could.
Right? That's
Yeah.
the one form of gluten that probably I miss. The rest of it I don't miss. But yeah,
Actually, the answer is yes. There is one study that came out in 2013 or 2014. And when they made sourdough bread with 6 different strains of Lactobacillus san franciscus, 6 different strains of that, those celiacs could eat wheat and it did not increase the inflammation in their gut. It was startling to see and hopeful for the future, but that's not commercially viable. Nobody could do that.
Well, they have to ferment it for so many days. And my question is, they just tested the markers of celiac disease, or they just tested inflammation. They didn't do a wheat simmer on them 8
That's
weeks
exactly
later.
right. That's exactly right.
If you're eating sourdough bread right now, do a wheat simmer and let's see. I
That's
have
right.
people that go to Italy and they're like, I'm fine with eating gluten in Italy, Michelle, because I don't have any symptoms. I'm like, cool, let's just do a wheat simmer 2 weeks after you, or 2 months after you get back, and let's see what's going on. And then we'll know if it's safe for you to eat Italian gluten. So test, don't guess, right? And our body language does not always tell us what's going on because our bodies are resilient and amazing. So we don't necessarily get symptoms right away. Some of us are lucky. We'll get canker sores right away or migraines right away. I just worked with somebody who's had diarrhea since she was in elementary school and gave up gluten. Diarrhea for the first time in her life went away. She didn't believe it. Ate gluten, had diarrhea within 15 minutes. Those are the people that are lucky in a sense because they, right? They really know and they're convinced. It's the people that have depression or anxiety and don't necessarily see the connection because you may not have symptoms. It may take 72 hours. If we have a peanut allergy, that's an IgE response, and we eat peanuts and we instantly stop breathing, it's easy to connect the dots. Guess I probably shouldn't be eating peanuts. What's really hard is on Tuesday when you have a massive migraine to be like, oh, this is because I had pizza Saturday night, right? It's hard. Some of us can't even remember what we ate yesterday, right? So to be able to go back over 72 hours and get intricate about what did I eat and connect the dots and the patterns, you're somebody that has to be super attention to detail, that's keeping a detailed diet diary and going back and saying, every time I get migraines, it's because I ate this within the previous 72 hours. It's a lot of work. It can be worth it.
Yes, but it's a lot of work.
It's a lot of work.
Brenda asked the question, is an endoscopy useful for discovering other issues like gastritis and ulcer, even though not great for celiac? Absolutely, Brenda. Absolutely. It's a great test. It's a very useful test in the right situation. And it is a valuable test to grade a person's level of celiac disease. So I don't want to say it's not, it really is. But whether you are a Marsh 1, Marsh 2, Marsh 3, or Marsh 4 makes no difference in the treatment. And what you're going to do with this thing, stop eating wheat, right? However, where it is of value, if you've had it done and you've got a report that shows there's a problem, is that you can go back in a year after you've been squeaky clean and recheck. And you can see that, oh, God, it's all cleaned up. I've never recommended a recheck on an endoscopy because we use the blood work. The blood work will tell us if your immune system is elevated fighting wheat and you do everything that you're supposed to do, in 6 months or a year later, you go back and recheck and your immune system's not fighting wheat anymore, way to go. You've calmed down that inflammatory cascade, because the concept of fighting wheat means you're inflamed. And every degenerative disease is a disease of inflammation. That's the bottom line. We're wanting to reduce the inflammation in your body.
Yes, absolutely. Mark has a good question. Does Medicare cover Zoomer test if ordered through one's doctor? Unfortunately, how many years does it take for this science to get into the doctor's office, Dr. Tom?
17.
17 years on average. And there's this actual study that's been done on that. So it's probably going to take some time before these are widely accepted by insurance companies. Right now, I don't know of any insurance that covers these. If you order it through your doctor, your health savings account, you can probably put it on that card, and you can keep your receipt and, you know, use it for your taxes because it is a medical expense. But right now, I don't know of any insurance companies that cover this test.
Dwin's asking, hi, I'm late. Okay, Dwin, welcome. Glad you're here, man. I want to get the Neural Zoomer Plus. Is that available with this group of tests or just the Neural Zoomer? Michelle?
So we're going to, we're in the process of adding some more panels to the website. And so one of my top priorities is to combine Wheat Zoomer and Neural Zoomer Plus, because we have a lot of people ordering the Neural Zoomer Plus, and then I send them back, usually they can add it on with the same blood, but those two are best friends. They go together. It's really important, because if we see a lot going on the Neural Zoomer Plus, we have to have a Wheat Zoomer, because the connection is so strong with intestinal permeability and blood-brain barrier permeability, and many of the sensitivities to gluten drive many of those markers on that test. So not all of them. Some of them require a lectin zoomer because there's aquaporin. So doing a zoomer bundle. Now, the neural zoomer that's a free add-on to that zoomer bundle, it only has 9 antibodies, whereas the Neural Zoomer Plus has 48, which is pretty significant. It's so much more comprehensive. So it's nice to do a zoomer bundle and a Neural Zoomer Plus. And then you get a really big picture of what's likely going on for you.
Critically important to do when people are suffering.
Yes.
Sherry says, this is so helpful. I've been diagnosed by my primary care physician with celiac at age 53, 3 years ago. I eat very healthy, gluten-free with minimal other grains also, and still struggle with hard stools. I really have to work at fiber. Is that the solution, or could there be something else going on in my intestine? I have an appointment with the gastroenterologist next week for the first time. Is there more I should ask them? I would refuse an endoscopy since I've been gluten-free for 3 years. Should I suggest the Zoomer test? Well, my suggestion, Sherry, is get an appointment with Michelle right away, and get counseled here. Have a 30-minute session. So how to best use this visit with the gastroenterologist, because likely that gastroenterologist will not be quite as current in the functional aspects of your gut. They're trying to rule out disease and make sure that it's not life-threatening at the moment. And that's really important, and so they want the test to see, is there a life-threatening condition here? And you can't minimize that importance. But having a strategy before you go in would be great, would be great to do. And absolutely there's something going on. It's your enteric nervous system. The nervous system of your gut controls the movement of your bowels. And the enteric nervous system directly communicates with the microbiome of your gut. So the mechanical action is activated by the messages from the microbiome of your gut. So if you've got a imbalanced microbiome in your gut, the messaging going to the mechanical workers is off. That's constipation. And of course, I'm assuming that you are evaluating your water levels from the formula we gave you earlier, but I would have a session with Michelle and just strategize and see how to best use that appointment with your gastroenterologist. So that's at consultations at theDr.com. We'll put the link in there.
It's so important to get both vantage points because they're completely different, right? So many people come to me and they're so angry at conventional medicine, but we have to remember they don't have the same training. It would be like expecting me to do surgery. That would be a recipe for disaster, right? Yeah. Because I missed every day of medical school and the full surgical residency wasn't there. So I can't do that because I don't have training in that, but we can expect a gastroenterologist to have this knowledge if they haven't gone on and gotten functional medicine training. So it's important to have both because they can rule out some big things, right? That pull-ups or diverticulitis or cancer, right? Crohn's disease, although we can on functional medicine tests see if there's markers for those. But I think it's really important to have the best of both worlds.
Right, agreed. Mark is asking, what if after 3 months of being wheat dairy free, your numbers have barely budged and many are still in the red? Well, the lifespan of these antibodies is anywhere from 4 weeks, three weeks to maybe 6 weeks. But that's the antibodies that you make today. Now, tomorrow, you're still going to make more antibodies. Well, I'm not eating wheat anymore. Yeah, but the assembly line doesn't turn off the day you stop eating wheat. It's like you get a vaccination, takes a couple of months for the vaccination to work because the assembly line is producing the antibodies to yellow fever or dengue fever or whatever it is. You've got to build that structure. You have to build that assembly line. Then eventually your brain says, all right, there's no more yellow fever from the vaccination in my bloodstream right now. General yellow fever, turn off the assembly line. And they turn off the assembly line. But general yellow fever is vigilant the rest of his life. If you're ever exposed to yellow fever, you don't have to build the assembly line again. You just have to, general yellow fever just has to flip the switch and you've got the antibodies in 2 to 4 days. Everybody's heard of booster shots. You know, you go to Africa, you need vaccinations months ahead of time. You go back 20 years later, you just need a booster shot a couple of weeks before you go. That's why. So a 2-month period, Mark, or 3 months, it's been 3 months, that would be enough time to see these markers coming down. We usually recommend about 6 months before you recheck, 6 months to a year, depending on which antibodies, you know, and how outrageous your antibody load is. But yeah, there's something else going on. Read my books, you know, or work with our team. I mean, this is what we do. You have to find out what's the trigger here. How come the immune system is still turned on?
Right. The University of Chicago Celiac Disease Center says that gluten has a half-life of 3 to 4 months. So I typically recommend people follow up at 6 months because most of us don't have unlimited funds, right? And so 3 months could just be too early and you may just need it a little bit longer of healing. I look at it as like, let's wait 6 months and use this as your report card to see how well the last 6 months go, or do we need to step it up? If it's still a lot of things out of range, then we need to make sure that skincare and shampoo and conditioner and maybe do a deeper dive of label reading, really avoid anything that has a label, right? Stop eating foods out of a package, a can or a bag, or so it's just helps us to know where do we need to pivot on that follow-up test. But give yourself time, 6 months or so.
Well, it's 7:07 here.
How is
I
that
mean,
possible?
I know. It's like Zoom. It's just so quick. So we promised, you know, I've always promised to try to keep these to an hour. And so we are. Some people are here and I didn't get to acknowledge them, and they're a part of our Base Hits program right now. Thank you so much. Some are part of the LPS study. Thank you. We're going to be wrapping that up pretty soon and having the follow-up webinars on that. It's nice to see all of you. It's really great. And Michelle, it's just always so much fun to do this. You know, it's just a great tag team. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Tom. Great to be here. Now, can everybody join at the Zoomer mini summit, or is it only for practitioners?
I think they can. Yeah, I don't know why not. So I don't have the link for that. I don't know that we have a link yet, but we'll post it on Facebook. There is a summit coming up about the Zoomer test. Michelle and I are on it. And so we'll let you know on Facebook about that. Or if you're here next week, you can ask and I might have more information. We do have a link. Marzi says we've got the link. So we'll post it for you here. And in the comments section. Okay. All right, everyone. Thank you so much. Wonderful to be with you. We'll see you again next week. Same time, same place. Bye-bye.